All right, so the knives are out really early in this second Trump term, if you look at the latest polling data anyway.
Yeah, it seems that way.
We're going to take a hard look today at that initial public reaction. We're not even, 100 days in yet?
Right. It's very early days.
And our deep dive today, it pulls from a recent Fox News survey, which is interesting in itself, plus Trump's own, unfiltered responses on Truth Social, and even some analysis from Fox News itself. So our mission really is to try and cut through the noise, get to the core of what these early signs are telling us about how people are feeling and what the key issues are.
And I think the first thing that just jumps right out of that Fox News poll is the level of disapproval is pretty significant already.
How significant are we talking?
Well, a majority are expressing dissatisfaction with his performance at this, very early point. And what's really striking for you listening is that this disapproval level, it's actually higher than what President Biden was facing around the same time in his term.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that kind of sets the stage, doesn't it?
It really does. It suggests a potentially challenging path forward right from the get-go.
Okay, so let's dig into that disapproval. Where is it really coming from? I imagine the economy plays a big part.
Absolutely. The economic numbers, they paint a pretty stark picture. You've got a big chunk, 56%, who view his handling of the economy negatively overall.
56%? That's quite something.
It is. And if you narrow it down just to inflation, which we know is a huge concern for people, it gets even worse, 59% disapprove there.
Yeah, and for you listening, that probably tracks with, ongoing worries about the cost of everything, groceries, gas, just daily life.
Exactly right. These aren't just, abstract poll numbers. They reflect real anxieties about your household budget, about affordability. And the survey also dives into specific policies like tariffs. The public view there. Pretty negative. Only about a third approve.
Only a third? What about the rest?
Well, a clear majority, 58%. They believe these tariffs are actually increasing costs and hurting job creation right here in America.
So if you've noticed, maybe, imported goods getting pricier, the poll suggests you're definitely not alone in thinking that.
You're not. And it's not just the immediate hit people are worried about. There's also this significant concern about the long-term economic picture.
Long-term? How so?
The poll shows an 11-point margin of people believing Trump's policies will actually harm the economy down the road.
Okay, so they're worried about things like, interest rates, maybe hiring, slowing down, stuff that impacts your financial future.
Precisely. That kind of unease. And it's probably fueled by just this really widespread negative feeling about the economy right now. A huge 71% describe conditions negatively.
71%? That's a lot of gloom.
It is. And maybe even more telling for your own outlook, 55% feel their family's financial situation is actually getting worse.
Getting worse. Not just staying the same, but actively worsening.
Exactly. And you add that to the still incredibly high worry about inflation, 82% extremely or very concerned. It just paints this picture of a public feeling really squeezed economically.
So, okay. A pretty tough initial grade from the public on the economy. How did the former president take this news, especially, coming from Fox News, a network often seen as friendly territory?
Well, reports suggest it wasn't taken well at all. A strong negative reaction, apparently. He quickly hit Truth Social to vent.
Right. We've kind of seen this playbook before, haven't we? An unfavorable poll comes out, and the reaction is personal.
Yeah, it often is. Instead of perhaps addressing the actual concerns that the poll raises, like those economic anxieties many of you might be feeling right now, the focus immediately shifts to, attacking the poll's credibility.
Which makes you wonder how the administration plans to handle, any criticism or data that doesn't fit their story.
Exactly. It raises those questions.
So what did he actually say on Truth Social? You mentioned he targeted the poll.
Oh, yeah. He went after Rupert Murdoch, Fox News polling specifically, and even the Wall Street Journal. He actually called for Murdoch to fire the pollster.
Fire the pollster? What was his reasoning?
He used his familiar labels, called them Trump-hating, fake, and he dismissed the Wall Street Journal as China-loving.
China-loving, okay. And the poll itself?
Just, quote, it sucks, with 3 exclamation points.
Classy. So it's really an outright rejection, isn't it? Not debating the findings, just discrediting the source.
Pretty much. It's less about methodology or alternative data, more about just dismissing it.
Yeah.
And if you think bigger picture, it kind of suggests a real discomfort with independent checks,
Yeah.
A strong preference for loyalty from media.
It definitely fits that pattern. Attack the messenger if you don't like the message.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is, even on Fox News itself, there seemed to be some acknowledgement of these public concerns. Like,
Right.
Rich Edson reportedly highlighted voter skepticism about the tariffs.
Yes, exactly. On America's Newsroom. And you also had Harold Ford Jr. talking about the, quote, angst and anxiety amongst a lot of small business because of those same tariffs.
So even within that often friendly media space, the reality of what people and businesses are feeling seemed to be breaking through a bit.
It suggests that, yeah. Which might explain the strong reaction. There seems to be this real pushback when maybe the usual narrative gets punctured by facts on the ground.
Yeah, like someone put it, when the propaganda machine occasionally glitches and reports the truth.
Hmm.
Bit harsh, maybe, but captures that tension.
It does capture that tension. And the concerns in the poll, they actually go beyond just the economy. There's interesting stuff on democratic norms, too.
Oh, yeah, like what?
Well, a pretty solid majority, 58% of voters, they support federal judges challenging the administration's actions.
So a belief in checks and balances, basically. People want the courts to be able to step in.
That's what it looks like. It underscores that idea that, for you, the system relies on no single branch having all the power.
And what about ignoring court rulings? That's been a theme.
Yeah, and the poll is pretty clear there. 2/3 of voters believe the president cannot just ignore court rulings. They think he's not above the law.
2/3. That's a very strong majority rejecting that idea.
It really is. And what's also quite telling is that voters seem more worried about the president ignoring the courts than they are about the courts maybe overstepping their bounds.
Interesting. So the fear of executive overreach is stronger than the fear of judicial overreach in this context.
That's what the data suggests, yeah. A strong affirmation of the separation of powers, really.
Is that across the board, or does it break down along party lines?
Well, obviously Democrats and independents feel strongly. But even among Republicans, it's not a slam dunk for ignoring courts. Only a slim majority of Republicans think the president can actually do that.
Only a slim majority. So even within his own party, there isn't overwhelming support for just disregarding judicial decisions.
Apparently not. It points to this broad public value placed on checks and balances. The idea that everyone, president included, has to follow the law seems pretty ingrained.
Now, you mentioned Murdoch earlier, this whole Trump-Murdoch relationship. It's always seemed complicated, right? There's history there.
Oh, definitely. A long and complex history. Remember those reports from years ago that Murdoch had supposedly agreed to get rid of that same Fox News pollster, but then didn't?
Right, I do remember that. And then there were those filings in that defamation lawsuit. Didn't they claim Murdoch had some pretty choice words for Trump in private?
Yes, quite striking claims. Sources alleged Murdoch called Trump a very unflattering term involving the word idiot. Let's just say it paints a picture of a relationship, perhaps not built on deep personal respect.
A fucking idiot, according to the reports, yeah. Yet despite all that, the private comments, the poll fights, Murdoch still meets with him, right? Wasn't there a recent Oval Office visit?
There was, which really highlights the nature of the relationship, doesn't it?
How would you describe it then?
It seems, transactional might be the word.
Yeah.
Built on power, mutual interests, maybe, rather than respect or trust or even truth.
Each side gets something out of it, perhaps, even with the underlying tensions.
That seems plausible. And it connects back to that expectation we talked about, Trump seeming to expect unwavering loyalty from media. And when that perception of loyalty slips, even just with a poll.
The attacks come swift and sharp.
Right.
It suggests a view of media less as an independent press and more as, an arm of his political operation.
One could interpret it that way. Now, shifting focus a bit, back to the broader voter feelings.
Yeah.
The poll also showed something interesting about people's desire for Trump to succeed this time around.
Oh, what did it show?
A pretty significant drop compared to his first term. Reports mentioned an 18-point decline in people saying they want him to be successful.
18 points, that's a big shift. Is that across the board?
Well, his core Mézières supporters, they seem to remain loyal, as you'd expect, but the drop is really noticeable among Democrats and, importantly, independents.
So maybe a broader weariness or skepticism setting in among those crucial swing groups.
It could signal that, yeah. Or perhaps just a more cautious wait-and-see approach this time around. Satisfaction with having voted for him, even among his voters, is reportedly down a bit too.
And this likely ties into all those other concerns we mentioned, right? The economy, obviously, but other things too.
Absolutely. The poll touches on those broader worries. Inflation is still huge, but also political divisions, healthcare, government spending, these are all weighing on voters' minds.
Okay. Any other interesting tidbits from the poll? Specific initiatives, maybe?
Yeah, actually. Even something like the proposed Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE is it sometimes called, that seems to be underwater. More disapproval than approval.
Huh. Even efficiency isn't popular.
Apparently not this version. And linking Elon Musk to it. That also gets a more negative than positive reaction from voters in the poll.
So maybe some skepticism about, bringing in outside figures without clear roles or accountability, or just general caution towards new government shakeups.
Could be a bit of both. A general weariness, perhaps.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. If we synthesize all this early data, what's the main takeaway?
Well, the big picture is significant public disapproval right out of the gate, particularly on the economy. His policies like tariffs aren't landing well. And there's real measurable concern about his approach to democratic norms, like the judiciary.
So definitely not the strong, overwhelmingly positive start an administration might hope for. More like a continuation of, well, some might say chaos and perceived incompetence from the first term.
The data certainly doesn't point to a smooth start or broad public confidence. And I think the reaction is almost as telling as the poll itself.
How so?
That immediate move to attack the media, attack Fox News for just reporting unfavorable numbers. It really underscores this rejection of accountability, doesn't it? A reluctance to engage with public feedback or data that doesn't fit the desired narrative.
Yeah, it highlights a potentially dangerous approach to truth and, independent reporting when you attack the source instead of considering the message. So definitely a lot for you, the listener, to chew on there from these very early indicators. It raises some big questions, doesn't it? About the direction of this administration, how it handles criticism, and what these trends might signal for the next few years, and maybe even for the health of our democratic institutions.
Food for thought, indeed.
We really encourage you to keep thinking about these issues, mull over the data we've discussed, and, draw your own conclusions. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive today.
Thank you.